I am Susan. I've just turned 45 and I'm beginning to feel my age creeping up on me. Nonetheless, I lead a vibrant life, determined not to fall behind the younger generation. Today, I want to share an event that marked a significant turning point in my life. This story takes us back about 15 years. I was working in sales at a major corporation, living a hectic life. My days were filled with client visits, my nights with creating documents, working late, and I couldn't even rest on weekends due to client issues and consultations. I was so busy that I didn't even have time to spend money. Then one day, I suddenly felt a strong desire to quit my job, and so I made the decision to resign. It was time to take my life more seriously. My family and childhood friends said it was the right choice for my health. But after leaving my job, I wasn't clear on what I wanted to do next, and I couldn't muster the energy for job hunting. After much thought, since I had some savings, I decided to take a part-time job while carefully considering my next step. As a result, I took up a job as a kitchen assistant in the cafeteria of a major furniture manufacturer's office building. That's where I met my husband, John, who is 3 years younger than me. He was also in sales and would visit the cafeteria at various times due to his job. Whenever I was wiping the tables, he would always strike up a conversation with me. At first, I was a bit taken aback by his forward approach, but gradually, I warmed up to his persistent approach, and we started dating. I was surprised at how comfortable I felt with his cheerful personality and the easy flow of our conversations. So when he proposed, I didn't hesitate to say yes. At that time, I couldn't imagine that this marriage would be a challenging journey. Visiting my in-laws' home, nervous about the marriage introduction.
You're the part-time worker, Susan, right?
She looked at me sternly. Yes, I'm Susan. It's an honor to meet you. And with a smile, she led me into the living room. I felt uneasy, wondering why she emphasized the word part-time worker. Yet, my husband acted as if nothing was amiss, and I decided to assume that's just how his mother is.
Susan, I hear you're older than John. Hadn't you talked about marriage before?
What? I was taken aback, unable to grasp her intention.
You're at a certain age, aren't you? My son is still in his 20s. Do you two really have anything in common?
If I took this positively, she might be concerned whether a younger son would be reliable in a long-term relationship. But her expression and demeanor didn't suggest such affirmative intentions. With extreme politeness, it felt like a warning to stay away from her son. Indeed, her husband had passed away early, and she had raised John alone. I can somewhat understand her hesitation to hand over her son to another woman. However, our relationship began with my husband's approach. Today, an important day, required some patience, so I stayed quiet. I responded to the awkward questions with a smile, grateful to my husband for changing the atmosphere, and somehow got through the day. And then came the wedding day. Waiting for the ceremony to start, I ended up alone with the mother-in-law for the first time since the marriage greeting. We had met several times since, but never just the two of us. The sharpness I had felt before was gone, but I was still nervous. Jessica, you must be busy today. Are you tired?
Well, yes. But you know, as you get older, a wedding dress doesn't look as beautiful.
Her casual reply took me by surprise.
Oh, don't take it badly. You look beautiful compared to usual.
Taken aback by her unexpected sharp words, I was at a loss for words when...
The ceremony is about to start. Let's get ready.
My husband entered the room with the ceremony staff. Hearing this, the mother-in-law said,
Well then, Susan, off you go.
And left the room with a calm expression as if nothing had happened. And I realized, she hadn't said anything until now because my husband or family were always there. Maybe I am still not accepted by her. With this thought, I couldn't fully enjoy the happiness of the wedding day. For months after the wedding, there was little interaction with my in-laws.
Don't worry about it too much. We won't have to interact with them often. I've got your back.
He reassured me, and I felt a bit relieved. I didn't want to worry my parents, so I didn't tell them, but venting to my childhood friend cleared my head. My relationship with my husband was good, and if I didn't dwell on my mother-in-law, I could feel happy about this marriage. Later, we welcomed a daughter named Emily. Many celebrated her birth, but my mother-in-law's joy seemed somewhat insincere. I made a point to keep my distance from her as much as possible. Then, shortly before Emily turned 1, an incident occurred. One evening, my mother-in-law suddenly visited, wanting to see her granddaughter. My husband was often home late due to work, so my daughter and I spent a lot of time alone. I was apprehensive about being alone with my mother-in-law, but I had no choice but to let her in.
Well, the house is tidier than I thought it would be,
she said, her habitual need to comment evident.
How's parenting going? Any troubles?
While the question could seem supportive, I couldn't grasp her true intentions. Am I overthinking it? I wondered. Actually, the night crying isn't too bad. We've been quite lucky, I replied.
Is that so? Here, I brought some food over. I figured you'd be busy.
she said, handing me 3 containers. One of them appeared to be a meal for children. I never expected her to be this considerate, and I felt the influence of a grandchild was indeed significant, causing me to reflect on my doubts about her.
May I hold Emily for a bit?
Of course, please do, I said, passing my daughter to her.
Hey there, Emily, have you been well?
She cooed, then gently placed my daughter on the floor.
Let's see you crawl a bit.
I exclaimed, surprised. It's not usual to put a baby down so abruptly, and I was concerned.
Oh, not crawling?
She mused as Emily rolled around, laughing on the floor. Emily could actually pull herself up to stand, a sign of her growth. My mother-in-law had raised children. She should understand this developmental stage, yet I couldn't voice this thought. Actually, she seems close to walking on her own.
Really? But she doesn't look like she's about to move. Is her growth delayed?
I don't think so, I replied, feeling my daughter's progress was average or even above.
No, it's a bit slow. Maybe it's because her mother's older. She seems to lack charm, just like you. Look at her, laughing in a mocking way.
I was shocked to hear her describe my daughter's laughter in such terms. But I realized later that this was what she had intended to say all along.
A younger mother might have had a cuter, smarter child. This one is unnecessary.
She finally said. I felt ashamed for briefly believing my impression of her had changed. She hadn't changed at all. She had just come to complain. Emily is very dear and important to me, I retorted, irritated.
Well, maybe so.
She replied without regret, observing my daughter intently. Her demeanor was just like the day of the marriage introduction. I realized she hadn't accepted me as the wife of her beloved son, nor could she offer love to her granddaughter who shared my blood. It didn't bother me what she said about me, but I didn't want my daughter to hear such harsh words.
Well, I'm satisfied. I'll be leaving now.
She began to prepare to leave, and although I realized her visit was just to vent her displeasure, I was grateful she was leaving and saw her out with a smile. After she left, I decided to check the containers she brought. Hurt by her cruel words, I was curious about the contents of her care package. Inside were frozen breads and pickles. Normally, I would appreciate the convenience of the breads and the longevity of the pickles. Craving something sour, I hesitantly tried the pickles despite my apprehensions. Yuck. I spat out what was in my mouth in haste. It was far too salty to eat without any hint of sourness. Puzzlingly so. I was thankful I didn't swallow it. Now wary of the frozen breads, I decided to warm one up and take a cautious bite. It seemed fine at first, but when I broke it open, I was shocked. It was stuffed with a large amount of finely chopped hot peppers. What on earth? I exclaimed, shocked. A mistake in seasoning is one thing, but this excessive amount of hot pepper seemed intentional. It was an underhanded way to feed me something. The meal supposedly for children looked like a normal carrot risotto but was incredibly salty. It seemed to be overloaded with salt as well. I was relieved that I hadn't given it to my daughter. It became clear that my mother-in-law didn't truly love my daughter as her granddaughter. She had only pretended to be happy, but there was no sadness. I had understood from the beginning that we weren't accepted. Instead, a strong resolve to protect my daughter welled up within me. That night, I showed my husband the items my mother-in-law had given me and told him what happened.
Sorry. I'm a bit tired. Can we talk later?
He responded indifferently, not as I had hoped. Can't you listen for just a moment? I pleaded.
Yeah.
Despite my pressing conversation, he seemed uninterested and kept fiddling with his phone. Lately, he had been holding the baby less often, and his detached attitude towards me was becoming more noticeable. Even when I spoke to him, he'd just say and wouldn't try to engage further, often retreating to the bedroom alone, claiming he was tired. It's okay for him to have his own time, but I wish he would at least listen seriously to important matters, especially since he said he'd be there for me.
I understand it's tough, but isn't this a problem between women? It's difficult for a man to get involved. Work it out between yourselves. You have a child to think about too. Mom is Emily's grandma after all. The details you're talking about don't concern me. It's an issue between you and Mom, so sort it out yourselves.
I was at a loss for words. How could he say that issues involving his own mother and wife were none of his concern? No matter how terrible my mother-in-law was, I had persevered, believing my husband would be there for me. Does he understand how important he is to me? Losing the support I had trusted, I felt utterly lost. I dreaded seeing my mother-in-law's face again, but we had planned a first meeting with the extended family for our daughter this weekend. I was about to tell my husband I didn't want to go through with it given the circumstances when I heard my daughter crying. I stopped voicing my complaints and went to soothe her. After finally getting my daughter to sleep that night, I went to bed myself. Looking at my husband's sleeping face, which I once found endearing, I felt a surge of helplessness and irritation. I had the urge to throw something at him.
No, that's not good, Sophia.
What? I was taken aback. He was murmuring Sophia in his sleep. Who was this Sophia? Could it be the name of a woman?
You said you liked me, didn't you? Ah, you're cute.
He seemed to be dreaming happily. Recalling my husband's recent aloofness and late returns home, a suspicion dawned on me. Before I knew it, I was reaching for his cell phone. I picked up his easily accessible flip phone and found a picture of him with an unknown woman and emails suggesting an intimate and intense relationship. The emails also detailed plans for a secret rendezvous in the near future. It's hard to absorb so much bad news at once. Tears welled up and I almost cried out. But fortunately, he didn't wake up. More than being devastated by the fact of his infidelity, I was filled with a sense of loss about where my life had gone wrong. Divorce might be simple, but I want to make the best choice for my daughter. Witnessing my mother-in-law's behavior and my husband's betrayal, my heart was in turmoil as the weekend of my daughter's debut approached. I had to act as if nothing had happened, being commanded to serve drinks, look for trash bags, and be moved around at every beck and call. Even though I wanted to be by my daughter's side, the situation made it impossible. My husband seemed to be taking care of our daughter on the surface, but given his recent behavior, I wasn't sure if I could trust him, and I worried. I knew I had to pull myself together.
Our daughter-in-law is an older sister-in-law, right? Or should I say, an older aunt-in-law?
Despite being in the distant kitchen, my mother-in-law's voice carried well enough to be heard. The relatives around her laughed loudly.
The grandchild, though the first, has a bold face like that older auntie. While my son works hard, the wife is just a part-timer. I worry about the grandchild's future. I hope they don't go astray.
I felt anger bubbling inside me as my mother-in-law used me and my daughter as topics for her drinking banter. But I had no energy left to cry. I had no expectations for this family anymore. Yet, at that moment, while listening to their conversation, I realized something. My mother-in-law had never spoken so badly of me in front of my husband before. Most of the relatives were on good terms with her, and it was unusual for her to speak like this in front of my husband. Feeling anxious, I hurried back to the living room, but my husband was nowhere to be seen. Excuse me, where is John?
He went to the bathroom a while ago.
One of the relatives informed me. My mother-in-law, ignoring me, continued to chat happily with the other relatives. Fortunately, a young female relative had been watching my daughter, and I felt relieved. When I took my daughter from her, I heard my husband's voice behind me. What's going on?
Sorry, but I'm going out for a drink.
What, in the middle of the day?
I'm busy with work, too. I made an effort to come today.
I couldn't accept his reasoning. From my work experience, I knew it was unusual to suddenly go drinking in the middle of the day, and he could have declined. Then it struck me. Was he meeting that woman? The plans I'd seen in the previous emails must have been for today. Looking back, my husband, who had been listening to the exchange with my mother-in-law with boredom, seemed eager to escape the situation. Everything made sense when I thought about it that way. Stop joking around. Are you having an affair? Unable to contain my anger, I confronted him.
Oh no.
Faced with an inconvenient truth, my husband seemed confused. I've never been good at controlling my emotions. If you recall the circumstances of my resignation from the beginning, you can imagine. I couldn't stand by silently and endure being slandered and cheated on. All the patience I had shown was for the sake of finding happiness. Now that I was betrayed by my husband, the support I believed in, I decided to act freely. I felt something snap inside me. You were calling out Sophia in your sleep the other night. There's no need to hide it. As I revealed this, the relatives around us looked over, surprised. My mother-in-law, too, perked up with interest. It seems she doesn't ignore me in such moments.
No, I only love you. What are you talking about?
Then show me your cell phone. If there's nothing, you shouldn't mind if I look, right? As I pressed him, my husband fell silent. When he didn't produce his phone, I grew frustrated and pulled it out of his pocket myself.
Hey, stop that.
He was flustered, but I no longer cared. Whatever he did now, my decision wouldn't change. I opened the photo folder on his phone and showed the relatives the picture of my husband and the woman. This is the evidence. Mother-in-law, what do you think? Then my mother-in-law stood up and silently confirmed the evidence of her son's betrayal on the phone screen. In the meantime, I transferred the images and emails to my own phone. My mind was made up. I'm done. I can't endure this life anymore. I want a divorce. Please sign the divorce papers.
What?
Both my mother-in-law and husband exclaimed in surprise. My mother-in-law was in shock, unable to believe her precious son was being left. There's no need to be surprised. Under these circumstances, it makes no sense to stay together. I'll be better off raising my child alone. We're done. I won't have anything more to do with you. I stated this decisively, without any hesitation. It was for my own sake as much as for my child's. I want to be strong, so my child can grow up freely and happily. Also, mother-in-law, you laughed at my job, calling it just a part-time gig. It's not.
What?
My mother-in-law and husband both gasped in surprise again. I'm a normal person, but my husband's workplace is managed by a family friend of mine. I got the job at the cafeteria because of their recommendation. I'm going to call that friend right now. As I said this, I began to make a phone call. After quitting my previous job, it was James, an old friend, who suggested,
"Why don't you take a break and work a bit? Come work at our company."
now, he's thriving as an executive of the company. He was someone I vented to about the wedding and subsequent issues by email. Furthermore, my family and his have a long history, and his father, the president of the company, dotes on me like a daughter. James's father was furious about my current situation and had said he would deal with my husband if necessary. When the call connected, I simply said, I can't do this anymore.
Understood. We'll proceed as planned then.
Thank you. Please take care of it. I ended the call with that.
What was that about?
It's decided that you're going to lose your job.
What?
He raised his voice in shock. The mother-in-law looked confused as well. It was not surprising that things had come to this. Did you know that you're up for downsizing because of your poor performance? And that the unexcused absences and false reports are catching up with you? The unexcused absences were probably to meet that woman. He was really doing whatever he wanted.
No way. It's not that easy to get fired. Don't talk nonsense.
Yes, there are procedures, of course. You'll probably get the official notice after the weekend. It's because of your poor work attitude. All our exchanges have been reported to the top, so they've taken your character into consideration too. My husband, shocked by the reality that he had been spared from firing simply because I was his wife, was dumbfounded.
That can't be true.
True or not, you'll find out after the weekend. My decision to divorce won't change because of that. I poured out everything I had been thinking, feeling a clear sense of relief. However, my mother-in-law was visibly angry.
Don't you have any human decency?
I do have a heart, but it's only there for those who show each other care and kindness. In the presence of someone like you, who takes only deplorable actions, that heart just escapes. As I spoke calmly, my mother-in-law became furious, and the relatives chuckled surreptitiously. Though they seemed to side with my mother-in-law at first glance, in reality, they might have been disregarding her condemnations of me. In an unexpected way, her lack of popularity became evident. Well then, I'll be leaving now. I don't intend to overstay my welcome in someone else's house. Saying this, I headed for the entrance with my daughter in my arms. Oh, and one more important thing. I'm aware of the woman you're having an affair with, so I'll be claiming alimony. Congratulations, you're now jobless. I mentioned this with a smile as I looked back, then left the in-laws' house.
Wait, please. I apologize. Just listen to me.
He called out from behind, but it no longer mattered to me. His voice was just noise. A man who would ambush two women like that was not worth my attention. Let him polish up his appearance and talents and try his luck at another life. The photos and emails I transferred from his phone to mine were quite useful in the divorce negotiations. Years later, as promised, I got the alimony from my ex-husband and his mistress and started studying nail techniques while raising my daughter. Later, with the concept of elegant nails for moms with short nails, I opened my nail salon and achieved great success. Now, it has grown into a large enterprise with chain stores. My flagship store, which I manage, operates by appointment only and runs in a way that doesn't affect my parenting. On the other hand, my ex-husband has been unable to secure a full-time job for a long time and is currently living a part-time life. Due to poor work performance, his shifts have been cut and his salary has been reduced to the bare minimum. The woman he had an affair with was not aware that he was married, and he is now facing issues due to suspected marriage fraud. Unable to afford alimony, his parents' home is being sold to make ends meet. As a result, my former mother-in-law, who should have retired by now, is working multiple part-time jobs to support herself. Seeing someone who once looked down on part-time work now dedicating herself to it makes me realize how really unpredictable life can be. Returning to my story, I actually got remarried. The person I married is James, an old family friend. I wasn't planning to remarry since I have a daughter, but he too had a failed marriage and was raising his daughter on his own. Talks about parenting increased naturally, and gradually I thought, maybe we could make it work together, and we decided to marry. Both sets of parents, who have known our relationship from the start, warmly blessed our marriage as something natural. Our daughters get along like real sisters, creating a lively and happy home every day. There have been failures, but I've come to think that it's okay as long as there is strength to recover from doubt and mistakes. Even if it takes time, no matter how many times I stumble, I am determined to always stand up. One day, I aim to be called a strong mother by my daughters, so I strive for strength.